So the global economy is expected to grow 3.1%, while South Korea is forecast to see 2.3% growth in 2024. Now, how realizable are these predictions? Let's turn to Professor Shim this morning. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for joining us. The IMF predicts the global economy will grow by 3.1% this year. Professor Shim, is this a surprising report to you or a pretty expected one?
Yeah, and less for me, this is not as surprising, and I think that is also the case for most of the economists. Given that there are a lot of positive and negative news all around, and some known risks such as inflation risk seems to be somewhat resolved, it is not as surprising that the IMF has adjusted upward its prediction on the global growth, although the change is somewhat small by 0.2 percentage point. And the expectation on 2025 growth has not adjusted, implying that the surprising component in the forecast are short-lived. I would like to note that while the inflation rate has become lower than before, the interest rate is still high in most of the countries because of the remaining concern for high inflation rate. And while the chief economist of the IMF also mentioned that the fiscal expansion due to election in many countries might increase the growth rate, fiscal multipliers are mostly believed to be not that high, and it does not have a long-run effect. Also, geographical tension is still there, which potentially affect the price level again.
Right, so the global economy to do better than expected in the new year. Now, we also have to talk about IMF's forecast of South Korean economy, which is expected to expand 2.3% from 1.4% from last year's projection. Now, that's also 1% up from its October prediction. Will experts play a big role here? What else?
Yes, your point is exactly correct. As we know, the Korean economy heavily depends on the export. In particular, export to the US and China takes about 40% of total export, according to the government data. Given that the growth rate of the US has been adjusted upward by 0.6 percentage point and that of China has also been increased by 0.4 percentage point, it is natural to expect that export to those countries will rise, boosting the growth rate of Korea. I also think that in line with the comments made by the IMF, the fact that we also have an important election this year might contribute to such a positive adjustment. It is usually the case, as I pointed out earlier, that the ruling party may boost the aggregate economy through several fiscal expansion measures, and they also positively affect the growth rate of Korea.
Definitely. Professor Shim, I also have to point out, it looks like two prominent sources of geopolitical tensions, one over in Ukraine and the one over in the Middle East, will continue at least for now. If they do last for the entire year, how likely is it that the conflict will be a blow to the global economy?
Yeah, while I agree with the usual idea that the geographical risks around the world, including the Israel-Hamas war and Russian invasion of Ukraine, is a still threat on the global economy, I am somewhat skeptical on its severity. Let me first point out the channel that the Israel-Hamas war can be a threat on the inflation rate, which is the factor that has been most important during the last 2 years. If the war is escalated to the entire Middle East, it can be an important threat on the inflation because it can create oil supply disruption. However, the oil market has changed significantly when there were wars in the Middle East because the US has also become a major supplier of the oil thanks to the shale boom. And if I look at the index that captures the geographical risk around the world, which is developed by several leading macroeconomists, the index has not changed much during 2022 and 2023 since the emergence of the Russian invasion on Ukraine, implying that the negative effect of the geographical risk can be limited.
Definitely. You mentioned South Korea's general elections in April. So it's so-called the year of elections with not just South Korea, but over 70 countries around the world holding elections, small and big. Which ones are you paying attention in particular that will make a significant impact to the global economy in 2024 or even in 2025?
Yeah, in terms of the impacts on the global economy, I am particularly interested in the US president election, as others would be. First, it'll impact the international trade. If the former president, Donald Trump, would be re-elected, the trade war would occur again, as he is believed to increase the tariff rate on the products imported from China to 60%, which is even much higher than the level he imposed during his first term, 25%. Second, it may affect how the economies would respond to climate change. The former president is also expected to repeal the IRA Act and relevant laws to protect the environment, which would affect not only the speed of climate change, but also many firms preparing for pro-environmental regulations. Third, it can also affect the stance of the Fed because Donald Trump is expected to elect a new Fed chair who would do more accommodative monetary policy, which can affect the inflation rate, which still stays at the high level.
All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for that thorough explanation and your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.